Imagine driving down a road where the only thing between you and a 1,000-foot drop is 2 inches of crumbling dirt. No guardrails. No warning signs. No shoulder to pull off on. Just you, the wheel, and the edge of the earth. These aren't roads you'll find on Google Maps. They don't show up in travel blogs or vacation packages. They exist in whispers, passed between locals who speak of them only when necessary, because even saying their names out loud feels like tempting fate. These are the roads that swallow people whole and give nothing back. Not a body, not a clue, not even a tire track. Most Americans have never heard of them. And the ones who have, they don't go looking, because these aren't thrill-seeker destinations. They're the last resort for people who have absolutely nowhere else to turn. For thousands of human beings on this planet, roads like these are the only connection to food, medicine, school, and survival. And yet, hundreds of people have vanished on these routes over the past few decades. Those who made it back refused to talk about what they saw. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 6 of the most terrifying, most dangerous, and most hidden roads on the face of the earth. These aren't legends. They aren't urban myths. They are living, breathing death traps, and people are driving them right now. If you think you've seen extreme roads on TV, buckle up, because what we're about to show you makes those look like a Sunday drive through Kansas. Stay with us until the end, because the last one doesn't just kill people. It erases them entirely. The first road on our list isn't just extreme. It is the very definition of human endurance pushed to its absolute limit. Picture a mountain ridge so narrow that a full-sized bus barely fits, with one side pressed against a sheer rock face and the other side opening up into a freefall that drops hundreds of feet into nothing. No guardrails. No lane markings. No margin for error whatsoever. The wheels of passing vehicles hang so close to the edge that passengers on the right side literally look straight down into the abyss below. This isn't Hollywood. This is Bolivia's Death Road, officially known as the Yungas Road, and it is one of the most genuinely terrifying stretches of pavement ever carved into the earth. The Death Road connects the city of La Paz to the town of Coroico, snaking through the Andes at elevations exceeding 10,000 feet above sea level. It was built in the 1930s using forced labor under brutal conditions, designed as the fastest route connecting highland communities to the lowland valleys. The engineers of that era had no modern equipment, no safety standards, and no alternatives, so they carved the most direct path possible, straight through the mountain. The result was a single-lane dirt track clinging to the side of a cliff, measuring barely 10 feet across in most places. When 2 vehicles meet head-on, and they do, one of them has to reverse to the nearest widening spot while the other inches past with the passenger side dangling over open air. After rain, the ground turns into slick mud. In fog, visibility drops to just a few feet. And yet the road stays busy. A safer alternative was built nearby in the early 2000s, and the old Death Road was officially closed to regular traffic. But here's the thing, the new road adds tens of extra miles to every journey. For locals hauling groceries, medicine, or children to school, that detour is simply not an option. So they keep driving the old road. They know exactly which sections crumble under weight, where rockslides are most likely, how to navigate the switchbacks in zero visibility. Some drivers keep religious icons on their dashboards. Others drop a coin into the canyon before they leave. Not out of superstition exactly, but because it settles the nerves before they commit to the drive. And they have to commit, because once you're on it, there's no easy way to turn around. The tragedy that defined this road for the modern world happened in 1999, when a bus missed a passing maneuver and plunged off the edge. No one survived. Emergency responders took hours to reach the site, and that's if they come at all. On the Death Road, a call for help is often just that. A call. The road doesn't wait, and rescue teams know it. For tourists, and yes, people do visit intentionally for guided bike rides and off-road tours, the first few minutes usually feel exciting. By minute 15, most of them have gone completely silent. Because there's a moment on that road when the ground literally crumbles under the wheel in real time, and no amount of adrenaline junkie bravado prepares you for it. The guides keep talking, keep pointing out landmarks, keep the energy light. But inside, every single one of them knows the truth. One wrong call and nobody goes home. The second road on our list takes us even higher, so high that the air itself becomes an enemy. Deep in the Himalayas, at altitudes exceeding 13,000 feet, there is a trail that connects remote Nepali villages to the Tibetan Autonomous Region of China. It has no official name on most maps, but locals call it the path through the clouds, and that name tells you everything you need to know. This is not a road. It is a handmade mountain ledge, carved into cliff faces over centuries, maintained by the same communities who depend on it for survival. At its narrowest, it is barely 20 inches wide. You don't walk it facing forward. You walk it sideways, back pressed against the rock, not looking down. The trail is known formally as the Dalpa Trek route, and it runs through one of the most geographically isolated regions on the planet. Foreign tourists are almost entirely absent here. Access requires special permits from local authorities and a guide from among the indigenous people who have been walking this path since before written records existed. Rain turns the stones into skating rinks. Summer snowfall arrives without warning. Winds at this altitude can knock a full-grown adult completely off balance. There are no handrails, no safety nets, no bridges. The closest thing to a checkpoint is a hand-painted rock marker placed by a herder decades ago. Yak caravans still use this route today, the same way they did 500 years ago. Traders carrying salt, wool, and grain navigate passes where the nighttime temperature can drop to -22 degrees Fahrenheit even in summer. The most notorious section is known locally as the Black Ledge, a section where a partial collapse decades ago left the trail running directly across loose, unstable debris. When two caravans meet there, one group must press themselves against the cliff and hold completely still while the other passes inches away. There is no space to negotiate. One misstep means disappearing into the gorge below. No recovery. No retrieval. Just gone. What makes this route uniquely harrowing is not just the terrain. It's the total isolation. There is no cellular signal anywhere along this path. No single mobile carrier reaches here. The only way to communicate an emergency to the outside world is with signal mirrors or smoke fires, and only when the sky is clear, which in the Himalayas can last for as little as a few hours before conditions change completely. There are no first aid stations, no emergency shelters, no supply points. Every person on this trail carries everything they will need from start to finish. They are their own emergency plan. Children young as 8 or 9 walk this route alone to reach the nearest school, a journey that takes multiple days on foot. By the time they are 10, they navigate the Black Ledge with the same calm confidence their parents do. Not because it stops being dangerous, but because it's the only way forward. Nepal's government actively limits tourist access to this trail not to be restrictive, but to protect the fragile ecosystem and to keep unprepared foreigners from getting themselves killed. The handful of outsiders who have been granted access, researchers, anthropologists, documentary crews, almost universally describe the experience not as adventure, but as psychological warfare. The cold, the altitude, the oxygen deprivation, the constant exposure to a one-step-from-death reality creates a mental state unlike anything most people have ever experienced. This isn't travel. This is survival at elevation. And for the people who call this place home, it is simply Tuesday. The third road takes USTO Africa, specifically to northeastern Nigeria, near the border with Chad, where the terrain shifts from mountains to something arguably more dangerous. Invisibility. There are no cliffs to avoid here, no obvious drop-offs. The danger on this route doesn't announce itself. It moves in silence. That's why locals call it the Road of Shadows, because people vanish here without explanation, without wreckage, without any trace that they were ever there. This isn't a single road but a web of dirt tracks cutting through the Sahel Desert and arid savanna. There are no official maps. Navigation is done entirely from memory, by the position of the sun, by dried riverbeds and isolated rock formations, ancient landmarks that have guided travelers for generations. The vehicles that travel here are usually old land cruisers and pickup trucks held together by rust, wire, and willpower. Fuel, water, and food are loaded with enough surplus for several extra days, because a breakdown or sandstorm can pin you in place with zero outside help. The GPS systems that do exist out here frequently fail. Magnetic anomalies in the terrain and the near-total absence of satellite signal make them unreliable. So drivers navigate like their great-grandparents did. By feel, by memory, by reading the desert itself. The belt of silence is what locals call the most terrifying stretch. 100-kilometer zone where there is virtually no sign of human habitation. No villages, no livestock, no tire tracks, just sand, thorn scrub, and heat that climbs past 113 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. Entire caravans have gone missing in this zone. In 2000, a group of 7 traders left the city of Maiduguri heading toward Chad with a load of fabric and oil. They never arrived. A month later, one of their trucks was found abandoned in the middle of the desert. The engine was still warm. The doors were locked from the inside. The key was in the ignition. Food and water were untouched. No signs of struggle. No footprints leading away. 7 people simply gone. That case is not an anomaly. Over the past 20 years, more than 30 similar disappearances have been documented in this region. Local authorities attribute most of them to the militant organization Boko Haram, which has long controlled stretches of this territory and has a documented history of attacking travelers. But not every disappearance fits neatly into that explanation. Some vanishings have no evidence of attack whatsoever. And that's somehow worse because the unknown is always more terrifying than the known. And yet people keep traveling this road because they have to. Traders carry salt, cloth, and medicine inbound. Grain, leather, and livestock back out. Herders push their animals across this landscape looking for water in the dry season. All of them understand the risk. None of them have a better option. Formal roads in this region are almost non-existent. The government considers the area too dangerous to invest in infrastructure, which creates a self-perpetuating trap. No roads means no development. No development means people keep using the dangerous trails. The cycle never breaks. Is a survival strategy. Loud sounds attract attention. And in this jungle, the attention you don't want comes armed. The trail cuts through some of the densest, most impenetrable terrain in the entire Amazon basin. No roads. No bridges. No infrastructure of any kind. Direction is marked only by barely visible notches carved into tree trunks using fruit dye or charcoal. Markers you would walk right past if you didn't know they were there. The path is rarely wider than 3 feet. You walk hunched forward to avoid tearing through vines or brushing against poisonous plants. The ground is perpetually wet, frequently turning into ankle-deep mud after rain. Beneath the surface layer of leaves and roots hide fer-de-lance pit vipers, scorpions, and trapdoor spiders. The humidity is so total that clothing never fully dries. Skin begins to break down after days of constant moisture. The air feels like breathing through a hot, wet blanket. The zone of golden silence is what researchers call the most dangerous stretch. A deep interior region that since the early 1990s has been increasingly infiltrated by illegal gold miners known locally as garimperos. These are not prospectors in the romantic sense. They are organized, heavily armed operations that tear through protected territory, poison rivers with mercury, and have a long and brutal history of violent conflict with indigenous communities. Anyone passing through this zone who looks like they might report what they've seen to authorities is a target. The jungle does not forgive witnesses. In 2000, a group of anthropologists from a São Paulo university set out to reach a remote Yanomami settlement through this trail. They never came back. 3 months later, one of their backpacks was found along the riverbank. Waterlogged, torn, empty. No bodies were ever recovered. The official investigation went nowhere. But people who live in these communities have no doubt about what happened to them. You don't wander into Garimpiro territory and walk back out unannounced. It doesn't work that way. For the tribes that live along this route, the path is not optional. It is the circulatory system of their existence. It's how communities exchange seeds, medicinal plants, and news. It's how the sick reach the rare riverside medical outposts along the Rio Negro. A journey that sometimes takes 2 full weeks on foot, carrying children or elderly relatives the entire way. Canoe travel is blocked by rapids and waterfalls. Helicopter access is essentially fantasy. So people walk for weeks without stopping for more than a few hours of sleep because the jungle doesn't offer safe places to rest for long. A strict code of conduct governs every step of this trail. You do not cut trees without reason. You do not leave waste. You do not eat from certain plants. These rules are not spiritual performance. They are survival engineering developed over thousands of years. Violating them can get a person expelled from the community, which in the middle of the Amazon rainforest is effectively a death sentence. So everyone follows the code. Not out of fear, out of hard-won, blood-earned wisdom. Brazilian authorities technically restrict entry to these protected territories, and entering without a permit carries serious fines or imprisonment. That hasn't stopped some journalists and adventure seekers from trying to penetrate the region illegally. Most get lost within the first day or two. Without a native guide, your odds of finding your way out approach zero. The path of quiet breath is not a destination. It is a lifeline disguised as a trail, invisible on maps, unknown to the outside world, and irreplaceable for the people who walk it every day. The fifth road takes us to the rooftop of Central Asia, high into the Pamir Mountains of Tajikistan, just miles from the Afghan border, where a route called the Pamir Highway waits. Locally, it's sometimes called the Road of Peace, which is about as ironic a name as you can give a road, because this is one of the most isolated, unpredictable, and merciless high-altitude routes on Earth. It runs at elevations between 8,000 and 16,000 feet above sea level, crossing glaciers, gorges, and high-altitude plateaus where the temperature can plunge below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Even in summer, the road is mostly unpaved. In some sections it narrows to barely 8 feet wide, just enough for a single vehicle to pass. If you meet someone coming the other direction, one of you is backing up until a passing point appears. In the mountains, on gravel, inches from the edge. The Pamir Highway was built during the Soviet era as a strategic military and supply route connecting remote garrisons to the rest of the country. When the USSR collapsed, maintenance stopped. The road decayed for years before local communities and international aid organizations began piecemeal repairs. But repairs here means filling the worst holes and hoping the rest holds. For hundreds of miles, there are no gas stations, no mechanics, no roadside anything. The only amenities are scattered ghost houses where, for a few dollars, a family will give you tea, a blanket, and a spot on the floor. You take it gratefully because the alternative is sleeping in your vehicle at altitude with the temperature dropping by the hour. The Kunza Gorge section is where experienced drivers get quiet. A switchback road blasted directly into sheer cliff face, with a vertical wall on one side and a drop of more than 1,600 feet on the other. Zero guardrails. After rain or snowmelt, a thin film of ice forms on the road's surface. Ice you cannot see until your tires are already on it. In winter, avalanches close this section repeatedly, but people still attempt it, especially when they're transporting a medical emergency or a load that can't wait. In 2014, a bus carrying schoolchildren from a remote mountain village got trapped in a blizzard on this exact section. They sat in that vehicle for 3 days before rescuers reached them. 2 children did not survive the cold. The road itself is quietly disintegrating from underneath. Meltwater constantly erodes the base, creating sinkholes and voids that can swallow a suspension system or send a vehicle into a violent sideways skid. In some locations, the road is literally suspended over a river below, resting on Soviet-era concrete pillars that are now over 50 years old. Engineers have flagged these sections as near collapse multiple times. Replacing them is considered nearly impossible given the terrain and the complete absence of available funding. But the minivans keep running, packed with passengers, grain sacks, bundled firewood, caged chickens. The Pamir Highway carries it all because these mountain communities have no other connection to the outside world. Without this road, entire villages go dark for months. A small but devoted number of extreme overlanders from around the world make the Pamir Highway a bucket list drive. Even the most prepared among them describe moments of pure helplessness, losing cell signal hours before reaching the next settlement, hitting a section of road that simply ends in a mudslide, or staring at a bridge that doesn't look like it should be holding their weight. Before leaving, most travelers register their route plan with local police, not as a formality, but as an actual safety measure, because if you don't check in, someone eventually comes looking. The Road of Peace is anything but peaceful. It is raw, relentless, and completely indifferent to whether you make it through or not. And that unforgiving honesty is its truest character. The sixth and final road on our list is not in the mountains. It is not in the desert. It is not even fully a road. It is the complete absence of one. And that's precisely what makes it the most terrifying of all. Welcome to the Darién Gap. 100 miles of pure, primordial jungle sitting at the border of Panama and Colombia. The only break in the entire Pan-American Highway, the road system that connects Alaska to the southern tip of South America. For this 100-mile stretch, civilization simply gave up. The jungle won, and it is still winning today, every single day, against everyone who tries to cross it. The Darién is not a destination. It is an obstacle, a labyrinth of mud trails, swollen rivers, swamps, and root systems that stretch in every direction with no logic and no mercy. Trails disappear mid-route. Rivers that were crossable yesterday are chest-deep today after rain upstream. There are no bridges. Crossings happen in wading through water full of piranha and crocodiles, or crawling across fallen logs that may or may not hold your weight. The canopy is so dense that daylight barely penetrates. You spend most of the crossing in a green, shadow-filtered twilight even at noon. The humidity is suffocating. Mold grows on clothing within hours. And then there are the invisible threats. Malaria-carrying mosquitoes, fer-de-lance, and bushmaster vipers, two of the deadliest snakes on Earth, giant bird-eating tarantulas, and water sources thick with bacteria that will shut your body down before you realize you're sick. No one has ever fully conquered the Darién. Spanish conquistadors tried and failed. American engineers surveyed it in the 20th century and walked away. Every road-building effort has been defeated by the climate, the disease burden, and the sheer financial impossibility of the project. Today, the Darién Gap is not just an unfinished road. It's an intentional barrier, maintained as a break point by both Panama and Colombia, partly for environmental protection of the Darién National Park, and partly because the alternative, an open land route connecting South America's drug trade to North America, is considered too dangerous a prospect. But that intentional barrier is precisely what draws the desperate. Every year, tens of thousands of migrants from South America, the Caribbean, Africa, and beyond attempt to cross the Darién Gap on foot, chasing a path northward toward the United States. They pay guides who sometimes abandon them. They carry everything they own. Many of them have children with them. In 2022, a group of 8 migrants from Haiti tried to shortcut through an unfamiliar section of the jungle. They were found a month later. 2 had died from snake bites. 3 had died from dehydration and bacterial infections. The survivors were found in a state of severe physical and psychological collapse, describing days spent wading through waist-deep swamp under non-stop rain, surrounded by the shrieking howl of howler monkeys that echoed through the darkness without pause. Rescues inside the Darién are close to impossible. Helicopters cannot land in dense canopy. Ground teams risk the same dangers as the people they're trying to save. The most dangerous element in the Darién isn't even the nature. It's the people. Armed groups, some affiliated with drug trafficking operations, others operating independently, have established control over stretches of the jungle. Encounters with them typically end in one of 2 ways: robbery and murder left in the undergrowth, or abduction with an unknown ending. Panama's police and military patrol the perimeter. They do not enter the interior. It is openly acknowledged that the deep Darién is ungoverned territory. The government knows it. The cartels know it. And the tens of thousands of people who cross through it every year know it too. They just don't have another option. The Darién Gap is bigger than a geographic feature. It is proof of a limit, the limit of human engineering, the limit of political will, the limit of the idea that every inch of Earth can be tamed and connected. It is a ghost road. It doesn't officially exist, but it claims lives every single year. People don't cross it to arrive somewhere beautiful. They cross it to prove to themselves that they can still survive. Or more often, they disappear into the green silence and are never found again. No trail, no signal, no answers. Just jungle, ancient, absolute, and completely unmoved. These 6 routes are not simply roads. They are the borders between myth and reality, between reckless ambition and desperate necessity. None of them were built for adventure. None of them were designed to be traveled. They exist because people have run out of better options, and they persist because the world has failed to give those people anything safer. The real danger of each of these paths is not the cliffs, the heat, the jungle, or the altitude. It is the silence surrounding them, the fact that thousands of human beings depend on these routes every single day, and most of the world has no idea they exist. Progress has passed these trails by entirely, leaving them as permanent tests of the human spirit. They are the quiet, brutal reminder that life hangs by a thread, and that for far too many people, crossing death to reach tomorrow is just another ordinary morning. If this took you somewhere you've never been before, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We go to places the algorithm doesn't touch. Drop a comment below telling us which of these roads shook you the most. We read every single one. And share this with someone who thinks they've seen everything. They haven't. Now tell us, which of these 6 roads do you think is the most dangerous of all? Leave your answer in the comments. We want to know what you think.